If you're like most of us, you've been denied a GLP-1 at least once. But did you know that less than 1% of denied claims are ever even appealed, even though the data suggests that over 60% of appeals are often approved? That means that people who should be paying $25 a month are instead paying thousands of dollars a year out of pocket, not necessarily because appeals don't work, but because the process is confusing and time-consuming. But that's where Honest Care comes in. You go to their site, and then you just start with a quick assessment. And then Honest Care will build your appeal with the clinical and medical arguments that your insurer needs to hear, and then guide you through submitting it. If you've been denied, don't stop there, because most appeals must be filed within 90 days. So don't wait. Go to findhonestcare.com/Kim to get your free assessment today. That's findhonestcare.com/Kim. Hey, Plus SideZ community, before we jump into the podcast, do me a favor, like, subscribe, and share if you haven't already. This helps us get referred up in the algorithm so we can find more people that need our help and guidance from our doctors. Thanks so much for supporting the show. Let's jump in. Are you interested in understanding GLP-1 medications like Ozempic, Wegovy, or Mounjaro? Then join us on the Plus SideZ Cracking the Obesity Code, the groundbreaking podcast helping people change their lives one episode at a time. The Plus SideZ podcast is a disruptor. We're breaking down barriers, smashing stereotypes, and sharing inspiring stories that'll leave you feeling informed and empowered. Join us every week to learn from doctors who are specialists around GLP-1 medications like Ozempic, Wegovy, and Mounjaro. They'll provide you with science and facts to validate these incredible stories. But that's not all. We'll also bring you the voices of the GLP-1 Mounjaro TikTok community, real people who face the challenges of obesity-related diseases and disorders and discovered the incredible plus sides of GLP-1 medications. Our episodes are filled with heartwarming stories, laughter, and moments of triumph. You'll connect with our amazing community members who are reclaiming their health and experiencing their fullest lives. Are you ready to embark on a journey of discovery and empowerment? Tune in to the Plus SideZ Cracking the Obesity Code, and together we'll change the narrative around obesity and end the stigma. Subscribe now on YouTube or your favorite podcast platform and join our incredible community. Let's celebrate the plus sides of life together, because every story deserves to be heard. Every life deserves to shine, and everyone deserves access to expert knowledge and medication. The Plus SideZ podcast. You're not alone. It's not your fault. Friends, the GLP-1 math is just not mathing. When I look and see 104 million people in America are struggling with the disease of obesity, and about 11,500 obesity specialists, that breaks down to like one obesity specialist per 9,000 patients. I saw the stat that said 72% of GLP-1 users say that they want more support on their journey, because I think we all realize you start on these medicines and you think, oh, it's just going to be like Phentermine or anything else I've ever taken in the past. This ain't like that, bro. Like, it's just not. It's different. And I provide a lot of that here by interviewing doctors and things like that. But I've had people been asking me, emailing me for years, asking me to do one-on-one consults, which I do, but they're expensive, right? So I decided to make a group where 10 people at a time would come in with myself and with Kat. We could talk about recipes. We could talk about exercise. We can talk about side effect management. We could talk about ideas on breaking stalls or things that we've tried. None of it's medical advice, but it is community support. It costs $50. If you're interested in that, there's a link in my bio. You just fill out that form. If you're not and you just want to go this route, that's okay too. I love you. You're not alone. It's not your fault. And hopefully you'll sign up to hang out with us. All right. Now back to the show. Hey friends, I need to prepare you a little bit about what our episode is going to be about today. And I'm sure you've seen the title and the description. Like, it can be a little bit confusing. If you've followed me and followed the podcast for a long time, I have said things like, gosh, wouldn't it be great if like the body positivity movement could like get together with like the GLP movement and we could like take over all the things and like actually get people the care that they need to get. And I think at the end of the day, I'm not really sure I know a lot about what the body positivity movement even is anymore. There's like a no lose movement. There's a fat liberation movement. There's a lot that I don't know. And anybody that knows me knows that I'm always seeking to understand. Right? I may not agree with whatever the outcome is, but I am seeking to understand. And I want to get us there as well. I think that with all the things we see on social and the way that social media works in general, where it's pushing the extremes, it continues to do nothing but divide us. And then we miss like the meat of really important conversations. And I want to change that. And I want Plus SideZ to be a part of that. I feel like we've been doing that with obesity. And I think we need to think about things outside of just weight, outside of just weight loss, right? So what happened was, I'll prepare you a little bit, is I saw this thing on YouTube that was Jillian Michaels. And she was actually, I don't know, like sparring, if you will, with people from the body positivity movement. And I actually think she behaved herself pretty well. But for the most part, she was just like sort of saying like, there's no such thing as like health at every size and all these different things, you know? And at one point she met with the guest that we're going to have on the show today. And I just loved her approach and how she handled things. Now, she is a civil rights activist. So this is going to be different than we've been in the past. We're not going to be getting all political in terms of partisan, right? But we are going to talk about some issues within our system and how that affects people in big bodies, okay? And I think a lot of that is really important, honestly, because there are plenty of people at the end, quote, of this journey, whatever that equals, that are still in big bodies. I'm one of them, Kat's one of them. And while we're okay with the fact that we're still in big bodies and we like our big bodies, it's still something a lot of people experience. And there's just a lot to this. I think so over time, I do think that with body positivity, if you will, we may have lost the plot, you know? And I think that it's important for us to understand. This is my first episode in trying to better understand. Okay. And I hope that you will listen with an open mind and an open heart and just think it's okay if I don't agree. I'm just going to listen to better understand. Okay. We're not going to have any ads on this episode out of respect for our guest. So I hope that you enjoy it. Have a great day. Thanks for being here. I love you. You're not alone. It's not your fault. Okay. Here we go. Welcome to the Plus SideZ podcast. Hi, Kat.
Howdy.
How you doing?
I don't know what date or time it is.
I
Obviously.
know.
We had a little situation. I thought it was 5:30.
Yeah, that's okay.
No,
You're here.
my time.
That's what
It was
matters.
supposed to be 7.
Yeah.
I've been in the time warp. But anyway,
Yeah.
I'm back. You know, I was in a time slip, maybe, you know.
Well, you've had a busy couple of weeks, that's for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, it's gonna be busy.
Yeah. All right. For people that are new here, we're going to do our intros. But if you are a loyal listener and follower, this is your cue to fast forward. If you're new here, I'm Kim. I am an obesity care advocate, and this is the Plus SideZ podcast. It's an education and advocacy podcast all about the disease of obesity, or how we speak of it from a medical perspective, and then all the things that go with living your healthiest life. And so we talk about everything from different treatments for your disease to nutrition to movement to mental health, etc., and even fashion. Can't be you talking about fashion and all these different things. Yeah,
we
cover it all here.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, this podcast is multi-award winning. It is ranked in the top 1% of all podcasts in the world, and I'm telling you that because there's a lot of stuff out there, and I just want to make sure that you're getting like the most reputable information possible. And I want you to know that you can trust what you hear here. Okay. We share our opinions like everybody else, but I'm going to let you know when it's my opinion and then when it is when we hear from other people. Okay. So we're so glad to have you. I've had obesity the majority of my life. My first diet was when I was 8, and I still live in a big body, and I don't mind that at all. Actually. And I think if I didn't, I would feel not myself. As a matter of fact, Kat and I had many conversations about as we were getting closer to that size 14. I was like, I don't know how I feel about this, because I identify as a big, beautiful woman. And so as time has gone on through the show, and I've changed size bodies up and down many times, and Kat has as well, we've talked a lot about this movement around body positivity and how even really important that was as we were coming up, and what that meant for us. Right. Because I've always been in a big body, but I feel like things have changed. And ironically, I came across something on YouTube one day where Jillian Michaels was talking, and she was having a debate with people from the body positivity movement. I believe that's what it was titled. And our guest that's here today, I found their debate or the discussion, and it was just so intriguing. I thought I have to have her on my show, and that is Tigress. And so we'll go and do some intros real quick. And so, Kat, I want to make sure you have a chance to say hello and tell us who you are. Quick pause here. I've had moments on my GLP-1 journey where insurance changes or rising costs forced me to look for a new provider. And honestly, that process can feel very overwhelming. But that's why the Plus SideZ podcast is partnered with GLP Winner to give our subscribers a resource to help them make that decision easier. GLP Winner is a comparison platform that lets you explore telehealth providers in all 50 states, whether you're looking for brand name medications or compounded options. You can see pricing up front, read reviews, and get a clear picture of which provider might align best with your needs. Check it out today at glpwinner.com/plus-sides. That's glpwinner.com/plus-sides. Don't forget the Z. Let me tell you a quick story. I was telling Kat how I was regaining weight after my 100-pound loss using GLP-1 medications, and I was having snacky cravings and waking up at 3 a.m., and I had hot flashes, and I was worried. But Kat was like, listen, I went through this last year. It's perimenopause, and I started HRT, and she used this company called Winona. So I started going there to see if this was something that was going with me. Turns out it was, because I'm 46. And it's been amazing. It's taken a while to find the right dose, but once I did, it's just been huge. I've been sleeping. I feel more myself again. And the hot flashes are gone, which is, geez, really bad. So I will tell you, it's just been so big for me. And so I wanted to partner with them on the podcast because obviously many of our listeners are going through the same age range and definitely are having these issues. And there's just no need for you to suffer. So if you go to the link that's in our link tree, you can click on that and save money. If you go there and you meet all the criteria, this might be something for you to try. So I just want to make sure you had this great resource because it's just been such a big difference for me and Kat. Again, you can go to the link in our link tree and get what you need.
"20 seconds a week to lose 20% of your weight in a year with diet and exercise. That's the power of GLP-1s through Ro. Ro helps find the medication that's right for you, based on cost, availability, and your weight loss goals. Losing weight with GLP-1s is possible through Ro.
Hey, I'm Kat. I'm Kat Carter on Kat Carter 7 on TikTok. I feel like I'm not going to really focus in on the struggles of up and down with obesity. I have always likened myself to being a fluffy fitty, even at 320. And at 220, I'm still in a big body. It's funny you said that about being still identifying as plus sized. I had a conversation with some friends that were asking me like how low I want to go on my journey or how much more do I want to go. And it's like, what's wrong with the way I look now? Like,
yeah, I get that too.
But yeah, I've always loved fitness. When I was a fluffy fitty, as I called myself, or fat fitty, right? Always, I felt like that was definitely the misconception that a lot of people have, is that we don't. No matter what size, we don't take care of ourselves. We don't get fitness. We don't get a good sweat in. We don't eat apples. And that's completely untrue. And
eat apples.
Yeah, well, it's freaking serious. It is. They think that we like, yeah. And
There's always specific foods. There's always specific foods they think we do absolutely eat.
Yeah.
And that usually involves Big Macs. It used to be, they used to say bonbons a lot, which.
Oh, yeah. I remember that.
Yeah. And, but then they're always like, you never eat an apple or you never, there's always specific food. Sorry, I didn't let it in.
I love that. It's really quickly. I took this random memory that's popped in my head just now. I took a German cinema course when I was an undergrad. Mm-hmm. And it was the German version of, I think, Baby Cakes or Sugar Baby. It was made in the States. It's an 80s movie. What's her name? Ricky Lake was in it when she was heavier. Mm-hmm. So, but the original version was a German film. This woman was a mortician, and all they did was show her like how her life was before she started going after this guy that she wanted to date. She came home and like quite literally ate from when she got home until she got to bed. And then she woke up and in the middle of the night and ate some more. And I was like, this woman is like maybe a size 14. Like I was like, I had to like in class, I was like, excuse me, can we talk about this? Because
Yeah.
This is completely untrue. Anyway, but
yes. Well,
and
we'll
that's
talk
where we
about
are
it.
as a society. Right.
Yes, yes.
Mhm.
So Kat and I have been friends for a really long time. We used to work together, knew her before I even procreated. So we were very good friends and started this show together because we just wanted to learn everything about this. And we have the ADHD real bad. But this should just be a really nice conversation today. And we're hoping to learn and listen to each other. And that's it, So come hang out with us, would you? Tigress, tell us a little bit about who you are.
So I'm Tigress Osborne. I use she, her pronouns. I live in the Phoenix area. I'm actually on the road now. So today I'm with y'all from Albuquerque, but I am the executive director of NAFA, the National Association to Advance Fat Acceptance, which is the world's oldest fat rights organization. We were founded in 1969 by Bill Fabry, a man who was passionately in love with his fat wife and horrified by the way the world was treating her and how that was affecting her economically, psychologically, socially, and gathered a group of friends, a mix of fat and thin people, including Joyce, his wife, and founded this organization to try to make a better world for fat people. And so part of what we do is our mission is officially to change perceptions of fat and to end size discrimination through education, advocacy, and support. And we do that by trying to get people to think differently about fat and what fat is and what fat people's lives are and what fat people's lives could be if we removed anti-fatness from all of our systems. And we work on some of that systems change through our Campaign for Size Freedom, which is our work to support local communities in getting height and weight added to protected classes under the law, because we can talk about this more as the show goes on, of course, but most places in the world have not made it illegal to discriminate based on body size. And that is true here in the US. We have 9 cities and 2 states that have some forms of protections, and they're still not comprehensive protections.
Yeah.
So yeah, we can get into that. But so that's who I am and what I do. I came into this work by way of nightlife, actually. I learned about NAFA when I was a college student. A woman on my college campus, Carrie Hemingway, was a member of NAFA, and she did a workshop about it for students. And so I've known about NAFA since my 18th birthday, which is when that workshop was. And but I didn't get involved until much later. I got involved in the world of body positivity through nightlife. I was the host and producer of a plus size hip hop party in Oakland, California called Full Figure Friday. And so I did the modeling, and the women who modeled for my flyers did local fashion shows. And we did parties at big conventions, at BBW bashes and other kinds of gatherings. And that's how I came to NAFA. They invited me to produce one of their fashion shows. And then that led to me being on the board and eventually now the executive director of the organization.
Awesome. I love it. I think we should probably talk one of the things I said when we talked, when you and I discussed, I reached out to you, you said, Kim, I actually think that we see things very similar. We just go about it different ways, right? We use different language. We have similar values, similar things that we work towards. We just do it different. And I think it might be good for us to just sort of talk about how, again, like the language piece, we do say different things, right? On our community, our insights, we talk about obesity. We talk about it as a disease, as a chronic progressive disease that is not your fault. And that is how we focus on it from like sort of a medical perspective, if you will. And then on your side, you see things a little bit differently. So I thought maybe it would be good for us to talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, so I identify as a fat liberationist. NAFA was founded as a size acceptance organization, but we now, in our modern era, identify as an intersectional fat liberation organization. And what that means is we move in our work with the belief that fatness is a natural form of body diversity, and that anti-fatness is one of the most pervasive forms of injustice and under-recognized forms of systemic injustice, not just individual difference or difference of opinion or thoughts about people's bodies medically, but systemic injustice. And fat liberationists believe that that we should not be thinking about bodies in a pathological way when it comes to body size. And so we actually object to the designation of obesity as a disease. We have a lot of questions about that framework, whether it's actually helpful to fat people and whether it's actually true and whether it's really motivated by science or like selective science about which things are funded. and how much it's tied to capitalism. And so we call them the O words. And I'm just, for folks who got here, because my work, you're going to hear language that you don't hear from me in my work unless you hear it in a critical setting. So I always tell people I use the O words in 3 ways. And by the O words, I mean any derivative of the word obese, right? Obese, obesity, anything like that. And also overweight. We don't use overweight because it implies that there is one universal weight that people can be over and under. And we just think there's more of a spectrum of body diversity. And there's not a fixed point that people are wrong on one side or right on the other side of. And we don't use the terms obese and obesity except when we are reclaiming the term glorifying obesity, which gets hurled at us all the time as like, if you're saying anything positive about fat people or even anything neutral about, if you're not demonizing fat people, you're making it okay for them to be sick.
Oh my God, yes.
You get that too, I'm sure, but like fat activists get that really a lot and in a really trolly way, even when it's from so-called health experts or health advocates. And so we embrace that term. If you're going to accuse me of glorifying obesity for saying that fat people are human beings who deserve to be treated well in the bodies they have now, not in some fictional future body, then I'll take it. I'll be that, if that's what you're going to say about me. So I use the word in that context. I also use the word when we are criticizing or raising questions about this framework. We do not think anybody should be blamed for their body in the first place. So like, you said in your intro, like, we don't think you should be, it's not your fault you have this disease. We don't actually want to associate words like fault or any kind of like moral words with what somebody's body is. It is what it is right now or forever. You go up and down, you go up and down height wise, you go up and down width wise, like whatever happens to your body. We want to remove that moral framework. But we do want to be really critical of the sort of obesity industrial complex, like the businesses that benefit from treating obesity as a disease versus treating body size as a natural form of diversity. We don't deny that there are correlations between body size and health.
Sure.
We have a lot of questions about whether the path of designating obesity a disease is the best way to address fat people's health. And so we're always really critical of that, so much so that many fat activists will not even say the words aloud. They will only use a term like the O word to talk about the words. Or we will often in writing asterisk out one of the letters the same way you do with a slur when you're writing it to indicate we have to use this language because we're working in a system that uses this language, but we want you to know that we protest this language and we want you to ask questions about this language. So we've always used fat. NAFA, the word fat has been in NAFA's name since the beginning. Originally, the organization was the National Association to Aid Fat Americans, and that was updated, a couple of decades into our long history, just to sort of clarify that we're an advocacy organization, not an individual support organization, although we do some of that too. But we've been using the F word, from the very beginning. We acknowledge and recognize that it is a trauma word for a lot of people because of the way that it is used against them.
Yes.
Right.
So when we're talking about individual people, we want to use the language that they like to use for themselves. And in a scenario like this, where the language you like to use for yourself and many of your listeners like to use for yourself is person with obesity, and we have an objection to that, but you may not want to be called fat, we have to have a conversation about what you want to be called.
Yeah.
Where we're talking about the movement, it is not the persons with obesity movement, it is the fat rights movement. And we always want people to use the F word when they're talking about the fat rights movement. And when people ask you to use it for them, when someone says to you, I am fat, that your response is, oh no, don't say that, honey. Like we don't want any of that. We want it to just be used in a neutral way and in a political way. We use it in a very political way, and sometimes in a celebratory way, because we need to be celebrated in all of the body diversity that we have. So for this show, like the word's going to come up between us in the way y'all use it and the way I critique it, and where our middle ground is. But for folks who are uncomfortable with any of the terminology, what I always say is like, first and foremost, take care of yourself as you're listening to this. Whichever of the words are activating or triggering or remind you of trauma, and it's hard for you to hear them, whether it's the O word or the F word, take care of yourself as you're listening, but also think about how the other people are using the language they're using and why, and what questions you have about that, and how you can find middle ground when you can't agree on the language.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's important, whether it be for, how you see yourself, during, if you're, for example, a lot of people that watch the show take GLP-1, whether you're on that journey, right, or where you would be after, or how you felt about your body before. It is quite the journey to really think about that when your body is changing. And I always tell Kat a lot of times, it's like there's more mental work to do than there is really the other stuff. You know what I mean? With the losing of the weight, if you will, right?
Well,
and so we talk about it a lot.
Yeah, and so part of what we do as an organization and what folks who identify as fat activists do is we want to think about that mental work, that personal work that you have to do to undo the internalized anti-fatness that you definitely got from this culture, no matter what size you are. No matter what size you are, what you have to do to undo and unpack that and hopefully help deconstruct it for the next generations coming up behind us, but also what you can do about the systemic stuff. And part of our concern with the framing of obesity is that the medical system is one of the places where fat people encounter the most discrimination. Yes. And sometimes, and I understand that there are many folks in the sort of obesity awareness and advocacy world who genuinely want to have talking about this help destigmatize body size. But we also know that the obesity treatment world has been promising us for decades that talking about it that way was going to destigmatize it, and it hasn't. In fact, it's increased stigma in a lot of ways, and it's medicalized fat bodies in a lot of ways, and brought to other discussions about what fat people face, the idea that we can only talk about the health pieces. And so, the sort of like I said, I think I said the term obesity industrial complex, right? Like all of the pieces that feed the sort of like, how do we do treatment? We have the same critiques as a lot of folks have about a lot of the rest of the healthcare system. Are we doing treatment that is what is actually best for patients, or are we doing treatment that is best for the bottom line of these industries? And we just have a lot of questions about that. And there's a lot of history of these industries sacrificing fat people's health and well-being and even lives to the gambles that they take on these things. Right. Yeah. And so that is part of our systemic justice work. NAFA is primarily a civil rights organization. There are some audiences where I will say, I'm not going to talk about health at all, except to talk about the systems related to health, because all we do is talk about fat people and health. But I know you guys are a particular community of people who are thinking about their health and thinking about how pharmaceutical treatments can fit into their health profile. So I'm definitely willing to talk about health with you, but it's so pervasive that we only think of fat bodies as a health problem to be solved, that there have to be places where we can escape that dialogue. And so a lot of times in fat liberation spaces, if we are not talking directly about advocacy to change the system, or advocacy to help an individual who is struggling within that system, then we're not talking about health, because there are a million other places where you can hear that. And not a million other places where you can come and hear no weight loss talk.
Absolutely.
No health. Right. And so that's what's a little bit, different. I won't do some media opportunities like this because I don't think the hosts or the producers or whoever is open enough to being critical about these questions. I agreed to do this with y'all because I think you have a lot of curiosity. I think your listeners have a lot of curiosity. And I just want people to know that we're out there, that this perspective is out there for folks.
Me too. Yeah.
So I'm thank you for the opportunity and for your, because if I tell a lot of people, I'm going to come on your show where you talk about obesity, I'm going to criticize the very idea that obesity is a disease. A lot of people are like, oh, sorry, we didn't know that's what you were going to do. We can't do that.
So that gives me the opportunity to sit here and I feel like after listening to you speak, I feel like I need to go back a couple more steps, in the whole, I'm working on kind of processing this crux of life where we live in, where I currently am in body pause, health and fat acceptance and obesity treatment. I'll say it for the sake of the show.
Mhm.
So I feel like but I feel like after just listening to you, I have to go back a couple of steps. Let's get to the foundation,
If you're like most of us, you've been denied a GLP-1 at least once. But did you know that less than 1% of denied claims are ever even appealed, even though the data suggests that over 60% of appeals are often approved? That means that people who should be paying $25 a month are instead paying thousands of dollars a year out of pocket, not necessarily because appeals don't work, but because the process is confusing and time-consuming. But that's where Honest Care comes in. You go to their site, and then you just start with a quick assessment. And then Honest Care will build your appeal with the clinical and medical arguments that your insurer needs to hear, and then guide you through submitting it. If you've been denied, don't stop there, because most appeals must be filed within 90 days. So don't wait. Go to findhonestcare.com/Kim to get your free assessment today. That's findhonestcare.com/Kim.
Well, tell me if I can go back a couple steps for your audience. Like, did I jump too far forward without talking about more of the big?
No. I think it's more like, in my opinion, like, let's think about, there's pieces here that you and I talked about. And as you were saying them to me, I was like, yep, all that's true. And at one point I went, can it be both? And you went, maybe. It's not my testimony, but maybe, we can, we can talk
That's
about it.
That's not my ministry. My ministry is not figuring out how the, how the obesity advocacy organizations can do better at what they do. My ministry is figuring out how we can get more people to do the other pieces, right? Mm-hmm. The pieces around the civil rights. And for a lot of people, we tend to think, what I get asked a lot is what is the difference between this and body positivity? And this is part of where I was trying to go with Jillian. So Kim mentioned that I was on the show Surrounded and arguing with Jillian Michaels, and I agreed to do that. The argument was Jillian Michaels versus 20 body positivity advocates or body positivity activists. And that was kind of true. I mean, the show is a little gamified and a little constructive and whatever. But I'm the fat lady from the Fat Rights Organization, and I usually don't identify at this stage in my life and career as a body positivity advocate, because body positivity sometimes gets really reduced to the very personal piece. Do you feel good about your body? Right? Mm-hmm. Can you look in the mirror and say, you go, girl, no matter whether you have bumps and wrinkles and whatever, right? But body positivity grew out of much more radicalized movements like fat liberation. And it was fat liberation and size acceptance people have been using the term body positivity for decades. But when we say body positivity, we're usually talking about that sort of Tumblr, Instagram movement that starts in the early 2000s, and it's bloggers and creators and influencers eventually. Mm-hmm. And then eventually it's also corporations trying to sell you lotion or whatever. Sure. And it can have this very you go girl piece to it, but it's really it's created by body rebels, right? It's created by people who are being told they're too fat, too queer, too disabled. They have too many scars. They're amputees. Their bodies are weird and strange. And those people are like, well, then we'll create our own media to show who we really are that represents us. And they start creating these blogs and books and social media pieces and, TV shows and whatever. And, but as it gets more mainstream, it gets farther from that sort of radical, the system is wrong, and more towards the, I can fit into the system too, right? And so I want you to feel positive about your body. I hope you can. I hope at a minimum you can feel neutral about your body, but I hope you can genuinely feel positive about it. But that's really depoliticized, because if you live in a body where your skin color or your hair texture or your body size or your visible disabilities or your invisible disabilities or any of those other things make you a target for disenfranchisement and oppression and things like that, it's a lot harder to just be you go girl and let it go, right? You want to actually be thinking about this. Yeah. And so body positivity starts with those radical roots. That's what I was trying to get to with Jillian, is sort of, she'd kind of reduced body positivity to some combination of you go girl and intuitive eating that was like, that's not what our movement is, right? And I think that body positivity these days does get mostly associated with like, are we a little bit nicer to fat people? Like, do we like Lizzo, or do we, it gets like a little, can we have a fat girl on Dancing with the Stars or whatever? And it doesn't take into account all of these other identities that we have and systems that impact our lives and like all of that stuff. And so, so we just like, but it does start with the personal. Well, sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes it starts with like an awakening around that more political stuff. And then you bring that, like you said, like you go a few steps back and think, right, how does that impact me? How has the way I've treated myself all this time, or I've let other people treat me, been because everything around me told me I was supposed to? Why am I only questioning myself and not questioning everything around me?
It's so normalized. Yeah, like it's so normalized. It makes me think, Kim, when we talked to Dr. Catherine Toomer, like fat discrimination is like the last accepted way of discriminating that like people allow.
Well, I'm going to push back on that just a little bit.
Okay, good.
One of the things, we hear that phrase a lot in size acceptance work, this is the last acceptable prejudice. If you remember that fat people come in lots of other kinds of bodies too, and they're experiencing all these other kinds of discrimination too. And you're looking around the world and seeing civil rights it is absolutely true. As I said at the beginning, there's not civil rights protections for people in larger bodies, or for people in extremely tall bodies or extremely short bodies. Like there's just no protections around bodies. But we're also watching protections around other kinds of bodies being rolled back. We don't want to say it's the last acceptable prejudice.
You're right.
Because there's a lot of prejudice that we are accepting in our culture. And if you're a fat person who also has one of those identities, you're catching hell from all the directions, right?
We're starting to, all right. Yeah.
But
thank you for reminding me that.
Yeah, but but the distinction though of what you're saying though, there are ways that we have some more social allowance for anti-fatness. And there are ways that it works different legally because there aren't those legal protections. And it is culturally sanctioned in a lot of ways. It's encouraged in a lot of ways. And so we do want to talk about how it works differently than some other kinds of discrimination. We just don't really want to play that game of like, is it worse? Or is it,
that's what
we don't want to forget how they all work together.
Is it last? Is it only, right?
And how much of it is made up of those other discriminations? Because one thing that is really getting a lot more talked about these days is where our ideas about how wrong fat is come from. And a lot of them come from colonialism and white supremacy. So it is baked in, like anti-fatness and racism are like partners in crime. And sometimes that's because the racism is the first crime and the anti-fatness comes along as the sidekick. And, there's really important work that's been done about this. Like for folks who like the deeper dives, right? Y'all should look at Dr. Sabrina Strings, who wrote a book called Fearing the Black Body.
I read it.
Look at Deshaun Harrison, who wrote a book called Belly of the Beast that's about anti-fatness and anti-Blackness working together. Deshaun says like you can't get rid of one without the other. Deshaun says it more eloquently than I do. But, and there's a bunch of like scholars who are particularly looking at anti-Blackness and anti-fatness in connection, because some of our very ideas about fat people are dumb, fat people are lazy, fat people don't take care of themselves, come from trying to create those ideas about Black people to separate them from white parity. Yeah. And so like, I know that's like, that feels very scholarly to some people or very sort of like historical, but what does that have to do with today? It has everything to do with today. If our ideas about body are created out of racism, then we always have to be thinking about racism when we're thinking about bodies, even if we're not people who are experiencing directly racism ourselves. Yeah.
If for our listeners, I've read the Sabrina Strings, the book, the Fearing the Black Body. I tell tell everybody that we talked to. I'm so glad I spoke with somebody actually who read it too. I got a little excited.
I always ask everybody,
also available.
The book, and they're like, no.
Yeah.
And Sabrina, Dr. Strang's book is really academic. She's a historian. Yeah. But if you want to, like, I can give you a resource for, like, folks, if you want to baby step into this a little bit and you're not ready to read what is essentially a history textbook on this, I interviewed Dr. Strang's on our NAFA webinar series, and you can go to our YouTube channel. We've got a bunch of free videos at youtube.com. Of course, our YouTube channel is NAFA Official, NAAFA Official. And we've got most of the interviews I've done with people over the last 5 or 6 years. And that includes Dr. Joy Cox, who wrote about being, Black women in a fat body, and Leah Vernon, who wrote about being a fat Black Muslim woman, and Dr. Sabrina Strings, and Deshawn Harrison. And so if you're not a reader, or you're not a reader yet, or you want something to chew on while you wait for your book to get here, please order it from your favorite local independent bookstore. So it'll take a little longer than that one place. But while you're waiting for it to get here, on our YouTube channel, all that stuff is free and is a place where you can, you can do some of those deeper dives around some of those concepts, including that piece about, do y'all talk about the term intersectionality? Should I say a little bit about what that means?
Talk about all of it. I think my goal at the end of this is to better understand. I think that each other, all about this. I think there's no way that we just got here. Many things have happened in the world and in the country, and all these different things that we are at where we are at. Yeah. And what you said to me specifically when we talked is you said, exactly what we said about we are now trusting again, right? Like the medical system and other systems who have done nothing but profit off of our fatness, right? And that is true. That is true. So, and that piece of it is really difficult because we know that there's a tremendous amount of, fat bias when it comes to medicine. I mean, they've studied it. They know that it's true. And so it's hard sometimes when we're sort of like, okay, let's do the trial. Let's take the medicine, all these different things. And I just think that we should talk about it.
Yeah. So let me do what I just said, and let me talk a little bit about what intersectionality means, because I know I told you this. I run an intersectional fat liberation organization. So here's what that means. Because it kind of goes with this thing about, identity and privilege and stuff. Intersectionality is a term that was termed by Dr. Kimberly Crenshaw, who's a legal scholar and who writes about race, and coined that term specifically originally to talk about the experience of Black women and the class experiences of Black women and how they are different than the experiences of other women, especially white women, and other Black people, especially men, and how your various identities interact differently with our power structures based on what the combination of them is, right? And so that combination she was originally writing about was the identity of being Black and female in America. But we now use that term in social justice spaces to talk about sort of power and identity and privilege, and making sure that we understand the ways that even though our lives may intersect around there's sort of a Venn diagram of what we all have in common as fat people, but that space in the Venn diagram where we all have something in common, the other spaces where we don't are just as important and sometimes are actually impacting us more. So that's kind of how I help people understand that concept of intersectionality. And that becomes really important when we talk about the medical system, because we know that there's bias about people in bigger bodies. We see that, there's plenty of research about medical professionals' attitudes about us, how they think we take care of ourselves, what they see when we walk in the office before they even ask us any questions or run any tests, right? But we also know if you are a transgender person trying to get gender affirming care and you're over a certain BMI, that is preventing you from getting gender affirming care. If you are a Black person and you go into a medical setting where we know that there are all kinds of horrible stereotypes about you that are affecting your health and your mortality as a pregnant person, or the way people believe you experience pain, or all of these things that are connected to race, and you are also fat, you're dealing with two kinds of bias in the system or whatever, right? And when we're thinking about things like GLP-1s, which I know is the heart of what your show is about, they're not tested the same way on different demographics, right? They're not as widely tested on people of color. They're not as widely tested on people over certain ages. They're not as widely tested on people over certain BMIs. BMI is its own whole problematic issue in and of itself, right? Mm-hmm. But if that's the tool we're going to use, and then we're prescribing something to people who we're not testing it on as much as we're testing it on other people, what does all of that mean? And how is it a different experience of whether the drugs are accessible to you, whether the drugs are safe for you, whether anyone will care if the drugs harm you or kill you? Like, all of those things are also impacted by all of our identities, not just our body size. And so as we, if you have an intersectional approach to thinking about size discrimination, or how people live in their bodies, how they survive and thrive in their bodies, you have to be thinking about how these issues affect different people differently.
Yeah, absolutely. Can you break down a little bit more about some of the things around the system outside of just some, we talked a little bit more about it, but I want people to really understand, especially as it pertains to, because a lot of people haven't read Fearing the Black Body. I haven't read it. Sure. And so I only know the gist of it. Could you explain that to our audience a little bit more? Like, where did that begin? I think it's fine. Like, we can go back that far. Where did it begin, and how does it become?
Well, y'all definitely go to the sources and learn more about these things from the people who are the direct scholars of this. But yes, if we think about what an idealized body is in Western civilization, and especially, I run a U.S. organization. I think most of your audiences, I know you have global listeners, but I think most of your audience is probably here in the U.S., right? When you think about what we think an ideal body is, and what that has to do with, who we think is fit enough to serve, who we think is fit enough to protect themselves or us, who we think is fit enough to work, and where white supremacy fits into all of that. You arrive on somebody else's land and you tell them everything about their diet is wrong and their body is wrong and they're supposed to look like you and eat like you and be like you. That's where the colonialism piece, really, that sort of anti-indigeneity piece, right? These are the indigenous people. This is what they eat. This is what their bodies are like. That's not good enough. They're supposed to eat like us and be like us. And so we're going to make that part of our historical attempts to dominate them. And then when it comes to anti-Blackness, we are looking for ways to justify enslaving people. And one of the ways we might justify enslaving people is by establishing their inferiority. And part of how we do that is by talking about their rebellious bodies and appetites, right? Their animalistic ways of eating, their fleshy bodies being representative of not being in control of their appetites or not being in control of their physical selves. There's a history of this that is connected to the slave trade, and that's part of what Dr. Strings talks about in her work. And then there are also other scholars looking across U.S. history at where we establish ideas of sort of like white Christian purity, things like Cotton Mathers and and Kellogg and Graham. Like, y'all know these household names, yes. Kellogg and Graham. And do you know that these food products were established to be bland and low calorie and control your appetite so you wouldn't be like those people? Right. Mm-hmm. So you'll be like these people, not like those people. And so there's all these different points in history where you see, like, also Atiya Chowdhury, who's a incredible fat studies scholar, does all this work around like milk and calories and the way that some of our beliefs about calories and wholesome foods are shaped by sort of like nationalist ideas about getting people ready for the military and things like that. It's all very interesting. And there's a lot there around. This is not just like you're sort of inherently born to look at a fat body and be like, ooh, gross, right? That's not historically true. Some of our oldest depictions of bodies include fat bodies that we sometimes think of things like the statue of Willendorf, which is one of the oldest historical figurines, often called the Venus of Willendorf. Some of us refer to it as the statue of Willendorf instead of Venus because that Venus image is tied to sort of like white Europeans' ideas about what beauty is, right? So the statue of Willendorf, that body looks like my body,
Right.
Especially as I'm aging, right? The older I get, the more I look exactly like the statue of Willendorf. And if you've probably, even if you don't recognize that name, y'all have probably seen her or seen it. I don't know. Like, we assume that this statue represents a female form because it has boobs and but also we know lots of different kinds of bodies have boobs. We just don't talk about them that way. And so the statue of Willendorf is like this little brown figurine, and it's like one of the oldest depictions of humans. And we will still try to say fat people never existed until modern times. We have evidence that fat people existed long before modern times. We have that evidence through art and archaeology and all these other things. And we don't always know what those cultures thought of those bodies or why they were capturing them, why they were depicting them the way they are. But we know that there's evidence of existence, at least. And so where did we go from? People are different in different parts of the world and different times in history to, yeah, they are and they were, but they shouldn't be, because they should all look like this. They should all look like this standard that we have now. And they should look like that, and their bodies should operate the way we think they should operate, and anybody else is worthless. Right? How do we get to a point where we have, the use as a history of what were called the ugly laws, right? You can't be seen in public if you have a quote unquote deformity. If you have a disability, you're supposed to be hidden away. But why aren't disabled people worthy of being valued parts of our community, right? Why aren't fat people worthy? Why aren't dark-skinned people worthy? Where did we get these ideas? And so many of them is like, it's like when you take off the mask of the Scooby-Doo villain and you reveal, oh, it's Mr. So-and-so from the carnival. You take off the Scooby-Doo mask and it's racism. That's what it is, right? That's what it is in a lot of cases. And that's what it is when it comes to anti-fatness. That's where the roots are. And sometimes we say that's where the roots are, and then we don't believe we still see it carry through today, but we do still see it carry through today.
Yeah. I think when it comes to, working within the system to try to change it, and you mentioning things around people can't necessarily not or fire you because you are a lot of times we say in a big body. That's how we talk about it here, because you're in a big body, or will not hire you because you're in a big body. And I'm wondering, it hasn't been my experience. I am sure that there have been times where I wasn't hired because I was in a big body. I'm sure, but it wasn't anything I knew about. And so it hasn't been my experience, but that does not mean it doesn't happen. And so, or that it didn't happen. But I'm wondering, can you talk to us a little bit more about that?
Yeah. I mean, there is a lot of research about employment discrimination in particular, that, where we see people not get hired in the first place, where we see people not even be accommodated at interviews. You're at a disadvantage. If you come in for your interview and you have to stand in the waiting room because they only have teeny tiny chairs, you're already at a disadvantage. You're already othered before you even go in the door and open your mouth. There are accounts of and research about people, doing really well in the interviews until the in-person interview stage. And then, suddenly the vibe check is different. I get asked a lot, well, how do you even know if it was because of size discrimination? It could have been because of something else. You'd be surprised how often people just admit it. We didn't think, you didn't have the look, and what that means is you're too fat. When Bill Fabry started NAFA, one of the things he was witnessing in his hometown was that the fat people were all working on the second shift at the post office, because that was the shift where you didn't interact with the public. So the post office would hire you, but they wouldn't let you be at a front desk where you interacted with the public. And so that limited opportunities for advancement or, whatever. And so it was very much a part of the beginning of our history. Esther Rothblum is a scholar who did a lot of research about employment discrimination, and especially against fat women, and looking at how salary differences across lifetime for people who have the same kind of skill sets are even more dramatic. When you think about the gender wage gap, that gap gets even bigger when it comes to people in bigger bodies, particularly women. We see a little bit more research about men. The employment discrimination piece also shows up in looking like not getting mentoring, in being in a workplace that has a workplace wellness program. That means that your insurance is more expensive if you're a higher BMI than someone else's insurance is. And not just for you, your whole family's insurance is more expensive because your BMI, where your colleague has, some other discounted incentive or something like that. And workplace wellness programs are protected by federal law. So even in places where there is some anti-discrimination law, it's one of the places where people can kind of wiggle around it a little bit. And, we don't think of that as wage theft, right? Like, but if you work in a system where your benefits are part of your compensation and somebody else is getting cheaper benefits than you, that's a wage disparity. And so the employment stuff is really big. And it can be hard to nail down in the research. Like, one of the things we know is that when we look at statistics about fat people where they have to self-report discrimination, those outcomes can be affected by people not wanting to think of themselves as a victim, by people having internalized anti-fatness and blaming themselves. So they are not the victim, they are the person who deserves it. This should be motivational to me to make change. Or they just have never been taught to think about it as discrimination when it's about fat people. And so sometimes what happens is researchers will ask these questions, have you experienced size discrimination? No. And then, the next set of questions is, well, have you experienced this? And it's yes, 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 yes. But you said you'd never experienced size discrimination. And these are all functions of that. You just don't think about it that way. So we did some partnership work with Dove a few years ago. They actually helped us launch the campaign for size freedom. And Dove is a little bit of a mixed bag in body positivity community because they did a lot in the early days of body positivity mainstreaming. They did a lot of how can we use this to sell our products, right? But they've also done They really did. They really did. And but also we ultimately decided to do some work with them because they were funding this civil rights work. They were funding us trying to help get more of this legislation off the ground. And they've done some really good work in that way around the Crown Act, which is about hair discrimination, against Black people's natural hairstyles. And they've done some really good work around that. So we decided we would, take the chance of working with them. And they did some research that was really helpful in establishing some numbers for us around U.S. reports of size discrimination. And according to their research, 34 million people at least in the US every year experience size discrimination. That is the equivalent of if you took the 20 biggest cities in the US, New York, Chicago, LA, Phoenix, Houston, and all the rest of that list of the San Jose, Minneapolis, all the biggest in the country. And you took every person in those cities and they were experiencing a kind of discrimination, and we don't talk about it. We don't talk about it as discrimination. So that's that piece, Kat, where you were saying there's, is this a way that it does operate differently than other kinds of discrimination? Because at least we know the other ones are discrimination. We might still tolerate it, but at least we know they're discrimination. Yeah. And so, it's big and pervasive, and it's a lot of it is employment discrimination. A lot of it is discrimination in the medical setting. And then, it's other things though. It is housing. It is people being told that they can't have a place because they are too big for it, right? You will let me move a refrigerator and a piano into this apartment, but you won't let me move my partner in because you think they're too big? Come on, right? We see it in parental rights cases where somebody's a really great parent, but they're being accused of not being a great parent because they or their kid is fat. We see it in criminal justice cases where people are seen as being more scary because of the combination of their skin color and body size, or that when they are victims of police brutality, that their body size is blamed on what happened to them. They didn't die because we were choking them. They died because they were too fat and they couldn't breathe because they were too fat. So we see it across society in all these different really, really serious ways. And I don't know if your audience can do this. I always challenge audiences when I'm speaking in person to ask me during the Q&A if there is a thing that they care about that they think there's no way at all that anti-fatness shows up as part of that thing. What is it? I don't care if it's, animal protections, environmentalism, whatever the thing is that you think there's nothing at all that has to do with body size that can ever show up in this way. And not a single audience member has ever been able to stop me. And it's not because I'm so great at this, right? It's because it's that pervasive and it shows up everywhere. It shows up at your Star Trek convention. It shows up at your grocery store. It shows up when you're trying to get your PhD and there's some, law professor in the New York Times saying that fat people shouldn't even apply to PhD programs because they don't have the discipline to finish them. Like, it really shows up. Can your kid get a desk at school that's big enough for them if they're a chubby kid? It's all over all of our systems everywhere.
I am intrigued. I'm thinking because I'm in agreement. I feel like it's definitely everywhere. But I'm challenged now. Like where? Yeah. No, even like what in manufacturing, let's say factories. Of course there's yeah. I think sometimes I've had conversations with people that like you don't really know your bias. You may have been interviewed by somebody who had good intentions that they don't realize they don't know what they don't know what they don't know. And we're working with that as well, not just the covert, or excuse me, the overt, but also the covert,
well, the implicit bias piece, there's the explicit bias. We know we hate fat people. We're just going to say that. And we see plenty of examples of that. And y'all live on the internet, right? I know what kind of comments you get on YouTube. Good Lord. YouTube is a cesspool of attacking fat people all the time. So there's that kind of explicit bias. And when we do things like when we are successful at helping local organizers pass these laws, the most recent 2 laws were in Minneapolis last year and in New York City a couple years ago. And we're just every media piece about it is just flooded by people. Oh, so now we're just supposed to let everybody be fat. And now taxpayers are supposed to, businesses are going to go out of business because they don't want to accommodate these fat people. Like we get all kinds of stuff. And also we get the people who just show up to say fat slurs and fat whatever. They're not making an argument. There's just an audience for them to call somebody, a whale or whatever. And so we see that explicit bias all the time. But you are absolutely right. The implicit bias, the things we think and act on without even realizing we think and act on them are rampant with anti-fatness too. And if you're curious about that in yourself, as like you're reflecting on yourself, one tool that some people use is that Harvard has these things called implicit bias tests. And you can, if you just Google use your favorite search engine to find Harvard implicit bias test, there is one about body size. And what it does is sort of like measure how you react to different images and different words together and helps you have, these have been criticized, but a lot of people find them useful as like a beginning place to think about this. Where did I not even realize that I connected that word with the fat person, but I didn't connect it with the thin person? They have tests like that about race and gender, but there is one about body size that you can take and, see, like, I think a lot of people find that like, oh, oops, I didn't realize I had some of these biases. And some people find that after they've been in a lot of fat positive spaces, like really kind of politicized fat positive spaces where we're asking these questions and thinking about systems, that they can take a test like that and still be surprised that they still get some more bias than they thought they would have. Because it's hard to unpack something that's that pervasive, that's
I agree.
We always say we're swimming in the water of it, and when you're the fish swimming in the water, you don't think about water. You just think about being a fish, right? And the water is diet culture. The water is anti-fatness all the time. And for people in all body sizes, because size discrimination does not only affect people who are fat. Perceptions of fat affect people in their jobs too, and in the realities of their jobs, and other kinds of size discrimination too. The oldest civil rights law in the U.S. is called the Elliott-Larsen Civil Rights Act. And I actually learned this from my intern, Anna Ardeline, who worked with us a couple of years ago when she was a master's student at Brandeis, that part of the way that law was created had nothing to do with fat people. It had to do with women being told that they were too small to try out for the fire department. But because the legislators wrote the language to just say height and weight discrimination is wrong, now there are protections for people around any kind of height and weight discrimination. Whether someone thinks you're too thin, too fat, too tall, too short, that is written into the law in Michigan. That it's not okay to discriminate based on that. It's just not written into the law in enough other places.
Yeah. That's really interesting. God.
Interesting. It makes me, I guess I'm You've rendered us speechless, and we are yabber yabbers.
I'm telling you. Once I saw her on there, I was like,
chat at me some more. You guys are usually a chatterier podcast, and you're listening.
Yeah, we really are.
This lady
we're very listening.
Right. No, it makes too much obvious sense.
That is how we are. We are very curious.
Yeah, we are yabber yabbers. It just makes me think of like, say, military. When I remember when I was graduating from high school, way back in the 90s when history started, and I remember not being able to
class
get
of 92. Chandler Wolves, class of 92.
Okay, see, close. I was 95. She's the baby of us. But I remember I couldn't get into any brand.
I'm not that big of a baby.
Yeah, no. Because
the military is its own whole thing. So this is part of what's interesting about being like a sort of radical lefty organization, right? Because I don't want to advocate for people to go into the military. I want people to have other economic choices and other I mean, I want people to have the right to do that if that's what they think is best for their life. I'm not fighting for that. Again, that's not my ministry. My ministry is not please go into the military. But at the same time, if the military is one of the biggest employers in the country, and you can't be in it over a certain BMI, you are cut off from that form of employment opportunity, scholarships for college, all of that. Yep. If you go into the military and you're not fat when you get there, you're not fat when you get there, and you get too fat, they can kick you out.
They can.
And if you want support through your military benefits, again, I don't want people to have weight loss surgery. I think there are, I understand that people have found pros and cons to it. I don't want it for them. I want them to live in a world where they don't feel like they have to do that. But if that's part of your choice and you should have autonomy to make decisions about your body and your health care is provided through the U.S. military and you want to have weight loss surgery so you can keep your job and they won't pay for weight loss surgery, that's not fair. Right? So I don't want any of those things for you. But I also don't want the first things for you, but I also don't want the second things for you. One of the most complicated things about this work when we're working within the system, because a lot of fat activists are more radical than NAFA, and they're not interested in working in the system because they're interested in deconstructing the system. I am interested in that too in my heart, but I'm practical in that this system isn't going anywhere anytime soon. And the harm reduction to me is getting whatever we can out of the system for however long it exists, right? I want you to have body autonomy. Everybody hear me say this. As a fat liberationist, one of the most important things we believe in is body autonomy, your right to make the choices you want for your body. And we get a lot of the fat activists are mad at me because I lost weight. No, baby, we're mad at you because of the way you're acting since you lost weight, or we're mad at the system for making you feel like that was the only thing you could do, or, you're throwing fat people under the bus now and we're mad at you. You actually losing weight is your business. If you've been given the appropriate information and the truth about the harms of going up and down in weight loss and the truth about the side effects of the things you might be using and the truth about the risks of weight loss surgery and all that, my ministry is, do you actually get all of that real information in a fair and unbiased way so you can make a fair and unbiased decision? And then you get to do whatever you want to, and I don't have to like it. When I'm advocating for a civil rights law that says you should not be discriminated against based on your body size, that means everybody, even the people I disagree with. And that means I want that protection for you, even if I don't like what you're going to do with that protection. And so that is, that's complicated, right? It's complicated when you get into that part of the sort of ethics and values and things like, it is terrifying to me to think about federal law that creates greater access to GLP-1s because I don't think they're tested well enough, and I don't think they're safe enough, and I don't think we've considered enough about the harms that could be coming down the road. So it's terrifying to me. And also, I want you to be able to make that choice if that's what you and your doctor think is best. I want your doctor not to be biased. I don't want you to have a fat folk doctor who's helping you make that choice, right? So I want all these systems to get clearer and cleaner so you can really be making an informed consent choice. Because if you don't have the right information, then you're not making an informed consent choice. You are making a coerced choice. If you feel bullied into weight loss by the healthcare industry, by your mom, by your employer, by your husband who's divorcing you and now you got to lose weight so you look thinner when you go to divorce court, whatever the thing is, right?
Whatever the thing is.
That's not an autonomous choice to lose weight. That's you being bullied.
I
don't want that for you. But I do want you to get to do what you want to do with your body, right? And so that can criticizing the systems, even if I want you to have what you want to have for yourself, can get really complex and can get misread as, I don't want you to have that.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, but I want you to get the right information. I want everybody who takes a GLP-1 drug, and I am a person who takes a GLP-1 drug. I take Ozempic for blood sugar management.
Mm-hmm.
I won't take it at the weight loss doses because it's less researched at the weight loss doses, and because weight loss is not a goal for me. Other aspects of health are a goal for me. I don't think weight loss is inherently connected to health. I'll work on the other stuff. But I'm a person who takes a GLP-1 drug. I want everybody who takes these drugs to know the history of fen-phen before they put a single pill or injection into themselves.
Fen-phen was killing people, right? Heart
Fen-phen was
attack.
killing people. And what the industry will tell you is, yeah, but this is better research than fen-phen. Okay, but also millions more people are taking it than we're taking fen-phen. What's happening to them? Are we getting the truth about what's happening to them? Is this as effective as you claim it is? Is it as safe as you claim it is? And if it's not, are you going to be held accountable when it all blows up?
Yeah.
And I want that to be happening all the time. Are you asking those? I don't want anybody to be so desperate to take these drugs that they don't care about any answers to any of those questions.
Yeah.
That's why the compounding of the drugs terrifies me. That's why easier access to easier access to the drugs terrifies me. And I don't want your insurance company to be the decider of what you and your doctor think is best for you.
Yeah.
So when we have these federal bills and state level bills that are like, we're going to make insurance cover these, that concerns me. And I will show up to testify. And I will show up to testify, not to say, do not pass this bill. I will show up to testify to say, do not pass this bill unless you include these safety provisions. Include eating disorder screening as a requirement. Include that it has to be prescribed by an endocrinologist, not some random online distributor or whatever. Like, include these safety provisions and include coverage for other things that people want to do about in their fat bodies, regardless of whether they have these weight loss goals. Let me see a weight neutral nutritionist. Make sure that my insurance covers that.
Do those exist?
Yes.
Oh my gosh, yes.
More than you think. Yes. So folks, if you're looking for weight neutral nutritionists or weight neutral practitioners for healthcare, people who are not going to force you into a weight loss goal if you don't want one. If you want a weight loss goal, that's your business. But if you are a person who, like y'all said at the top of the hour, I want to be managing this differently, but I'm not doing that to pursue thinness. If you want to work with a doctor who has that attitude, there are some really great organizations that can help connect you with folks. ASDA is the Association for Size, Diversity, and Health. They are the Health at Every Size folks. They own the trademark to Health at Every Size. It was like a community effort to trademark that term so that pharmaceutical companies and corporate diet companies and stuff could not take that term and twist it into something else. And there are a lot of nutritionists and dietitians, registered dietitians of all sizes that are members of that professional organization who will work with you on nutrition counseling that's not based around a weight loss goal, but is based around your other numbers, your cholesterol, your blood sugar, whatever your goals are, right? Awesome. The Association for Weight and Size Inclusive Medicine is a physicians organization. It is doctors who are asking the questions about, are we getting fat people healthier by focusing on weight loss, or are we getting fat people healthier by not focusing on weight loss? And so, Awesome, ASDA's been around for 20 years. Awesome's been around for just about a year and a half, but a lot of those doctors have been doing weight inclusive healthcare for years and even decades. And now I'm so proud of medical students for size inclusivity because they're all over the country at different medical schools, training young doctors or new doctors of all ages, to think about, where does the research show us that pursuing weight loss and pursuing health are not the same thing, and sometimes pursuing weight loss is counter to pursuing health. So how do we make health improvements without that focus? It's not just NAFA, because a lot of times people just think NAFA's a bunch of crazy fat people who got together and made up a bunch of excuses to stay fat. right? That's how fat activism gets talked about a lot, especially by people who don't actually listen to what we say. They just see a room full of fat people and think that must be either a Weight Watchers meeting, a problem, or a joke.
Oh.
It's either a funny scene from Family Guy, or it's a Weight Watchers meeting, or it's some weirdos, right? Mm-hmm. We're not science denying weirdos. We are science questioning fat people who stand in our body sovereignty, right? We want to be in control of our own bodies, on our own decisions. We want to have eating disorders treated as eating disorders, even though we're fat. Not that good job. At least you're losing weight through your eating disorder. We don't want that shit. We want to be able to, get the surgeries we need, which can be done at the sizes we are. We know they can, because if you can perform weight loss surgery on a 400-pound person, you can perform other surgeries on a 400-pound person. Are there greater risks? Maybe. What should you be developing to mitigate those risks besides just you can't have this until you lose weight? There's all of these things that we want that are, I don't think crazy. I think would make a better world for everybody.
Same.
And the less everybody else is afraid of being fat, the more we treat fat people terribly, the more everybody else is afraid of fat. And that's how you get the other people to spend the money on the drugs and the treatment, right? That not everybody, when you look at the stats, 1 in 8 Americans is taking a GLP-1. That's not all fat people.
No.
And it's definitely not all visibly fat people or very fat people, or what the medical industry would classify as type 3 obesity. It's not only them. In fact, sometimes it's harder for us to get the stuff. So it's actually the people on the other end who have access, right? And so, but why are they so scared, and what are they so scared of? And what are they willing to sacrifice about their health in pursuit of health? Some of the earliest fat liberationists, Lynn McAfee comes to mind. Lynn McAfee is one of the founding members of the Fat Underground, which was this radical feminist fat group that started a couple years after NAFA. They started working with NAFA, and they were kind of y'all aren't radical enough. You're still trying to be the nice fat people, and we want to burn shit down. We're not going to.
All right.
Yeah, they were more like that, But Lynn was part of what revolutionized Lynn was she was a research librarian. And as she was poking around in the research, trying to figure out why she'd been fat since she was a baby, and why couldn't she ever lose weight and keep it off and whatever. And she found all this research that basically said, hey, almost no one can lose weight and keep it off. And she was like, why aren't we telling people this? Why aren't we telling them?
I just learned it.
We are.
I just learned it. That's what's fucking crazy. Sorry, hallelujah. I didn't know it either. That's the thing, is I start this podcast because at the end of the day, I was just wildly curious, and I needed to know everything about this, because if I'm going to be doing this and talking about this, I'm going to know, and I'm going to make sure everybody else does too, right? Yeah. And as it happens, I accidentally crowdsourced, right? So as 3 years of doing this, we're interviewing all these experts, endocrinologists, bariatric surgeons, dietitians, obesity specialists, just regular people who've been treating weight forever, and all the different language that they use. And as this is happening, I'm just sort of starting to see these dots connect. And at some point over the past season, I was like, wait a minute. So are you guys telling me that I'm probably going to take this medicine right now, in my size 16 body, right? Do all my nutrition, all my movement, continue to lower my deficit, and I'm never going to be in a skinny body because it's actually mostly out of my control? And the answer is yes.
And the answer is yes. And that if you are one of the small number of people who get there, you're probably not going to stay there. And if you are one of the people who go up and down in the pursuit of getting there, you're making your health worse than if you had just stayed fat. There's all of these things that we just don't talk about enough. And when the fat advocates talk about them, people go, well, of course you would say that because you just want an excuse to stay fat and lazy.
Sure.
Right?
That's the whole thing, excuse to stay fat. I think it's, we're getting to the core. It's the popular misconception that we just don't do anything. Obese or fat people
it's too hard.
You don't want to eat an apple, like we said at the beginning, right? You don't want to eat an apple. You want to eat a candy apple. So of course you're breaking up shit so that you can keep on eating candy apples.
You want to sit in that bed and just sit there all day. You don't do anything. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it was really
brain
blowing my
back there.
mind when it came time talking about like regain. So like having like our bodies sort of adjusting and changing. So my sister died recently. I've gained some weight. Before that, I started going through perimod. I gained some weight. I'm on a GLP-1 in a deficit, doing all the right thing. You know what I'm saying? And I was like, wait a second, right? Like nothing that we know at all, right? And so that's why when I really started being like, there's just way more to this, right?
Well, and you have a whole cultural narrative that says it's always your fault, right? Because going back to that, it's I understand for many people, the first time they hear you've been diagnosed with obesity, and obesity is a chronic condition, and it is not your fault. Even though, like, I'm skeptical of some of that messages because it comes from the wolves in sheep's clothing of the pharmaceutical companies. Of like, it's not your fault. Here, take this. But I understand how powerful it is. I've witnessed it firsthand because not all the fat people in my life are fat liberationists, right? I still have fat people in my life who are fully bought into everything about the cultural narratives about fat. And I've watched some of them get this diagnosis and feel a tremendous sense of relief because they've been spending their entire life with somebody saying, you're only a loser, you're only a loser because you're not losing. Right. And you're only, and something's wrong with you, get it together, discipline yourself, eat better, move more. You must be doing something wrong. You must be doing something wrong. You must be doing something wrong. The first time you hear somebody say it is not your fault, that's a tremendous relief.
Absolutely, it is. Yes.
And there is real stuff that is actually physically going along in your body besides just what you eat and when you exercise. That makes some of the difference between the size you are and the size you could be, or the size you are and the size someone else is. There are physiological things here. We're not denying that because, again, we get accused a lot of like, oh, you just don't believe in science. No, I believe in science more than you do. Because I believe in actually looking at what the science says and not only looking at the science that confirms what I believe.
Yeah.
There's science.
Confirmation bias is very real for everyone, especially on the internet. Even people with the best intentions. I tell people all the time, it's okay that you have bias. It's normal. It's human, right? It's about when it does happen, how do you examine it and how do you adjust? Right. Like that's, I mean, because I don't think that it's anything that you should be ashamed of. If you have it, you can go, how do I do better?
And if you have a dream of being thin, I don't blame you for that either. But again, I don't want to be blaming people for anything, right? But you live in a culture where we have evidence that you will be treated better if you're thin.
Absolutely,
and
we do.
Even if we have evidence, everything that I'm fighting for around
everything you're talking about.
Proof of why, like the why we need all of those things, we don't have them yet. And some people feel very much like, girl, I hear you. I believe you. I want that too for the next generation, but we don't have it yet. So I need to take this drug so I can get smaller, so I can get put my wedding dress, go on my honeymoon, get this knee surgery that I need, play more with my kid, whatever people's reasons are. My question is always, can you actually have those things, and could you have those things anyway? Could you play with your kids anyway by making some other changes? Could you just get a wedding dress that looks good on you now? Can you listen to what some of the travel bloggers are teaching you about how you can still have a really incredible honeymoon even if you haven't lost 50 pounds before you go? Like, is there a way to do it now while we work on changing the system? And if you think the only way to do it is by you getting smaller, then I don't blame you for that. Yeah. You're right. You're right that it could have material impacts.
Yeah.
You could have material impacts on you surviving. And especially if you are somebody who is also living with all these other forms of discrimination. I can eliminate one of these by taking Ozempic. Let me at it, right? Absolutely. But then the question is, are you really going to eliminate it? Yeah. If I listen to Novo Nordisk in their own best research, and so again, folks who listen to me in other settings, we don't always name numbers and talk about like sizes specifically. I'm going to say some things about myself in terms of like my weight and size. If I am designated, type class 3 obesity, right? What many people still call morbid obesity. The obesity
obviously morbidly obese right here. Hey.
Yeah. And that
used to call me. Yeah.
We don't use that disrespectful language anymore, but that language gets used out in the world.
It was
horrible
so
language.
disrespectful.
All the time, still gets used.
Well,
all
they
the
don't
time.
do it anymore, but it's because of work like yours that they don't.
In theory, they don't.
now.
Well, yeah, and in theory, they don't do it anymore, but that hasn't trickled down to the whole system. A lot of people in the medical system are still using that language.
Yes.
So whatever you call it, I'm type 3 obese, I'm morbidly obese, whatever. If I went up to the weight loss, the weight loss doses of my GLP-1 to try to make that one of my goals instead of just blood sugar management, which is doing just fine at the level it's approved at for that. If I decided I'm going to pursue weight loss and I'm going to go up, by their own best research, I would lose probably up to 20% of my weight. And I might not lose any of that because only about 80% people lose up to 20% of their weight. If I lose 20% of my weight, do you know what I am?
You're still
obese.
Me too.
Type 3 obesity, right? If I lose 20% of my body size, I am still all those things. And the next doctor's office that I walk into that doesn't know my history, they're going to say, if you would just lose 5%, just 5%, it's going to make a huge difference in your whole medical profile. But I've already lost 20%, right? It doesn't, the math gets manipulated. However, it gets manipulated to sell us the stuff, to make us feel like it's to stay hopeful. And it might be, if you feel like it's your best hope and it's what you're going to do, bless. And I hope you stay protected in all the ways. And also, I'm going to still be over here being very, very skeptical. Sure. When I say that I want everybody to know the story of Fen, one of the things that sort of, it wasn't the biggest leap forward for me in getting sort of radicalized around body size stuff. But when I was 21 and working this after school program in San Francisco, and I had a colleague who was the same size as me. We were both around what would be today, probably a 16, if that. And I had been a little bit exposed to NAFA and some books about fat stuff and whatever. And she'd had none of that. And she was very much in a diet culture mindset. And she started taking Fen, and they pulled it off the market because it was creating heart problems for people. It was killing people and creating hypertension and heart problems for people. They pulled it off the market. And she came into our center and said to the rest of the staff, me and the rest of the staff, we're all young 20-somethings working in this after school program. I'm going to keep taking this drug, and I wanted you guys to know, so if I have a heart attack in front of the kids, you know what to tell the paramedics. Oh my gosh. And I was like, this is what we're doing, right? This is what we're doing. This is what we're doing. I'd rather take my chances on having a heart attack with this drug than take my chances on getting any fatter. Yeah. I wasn't with it. I was not ready to make that choice. And I know that there are people who will say, well, you're going to have a heart attack anyway, fatty, because you're fat. I mean, maybe. My stepfather had a heart attack at 36. He wasn't fat. Yeah, my great grandmother lived well into her 90s, and she weighed about the same that I weigh. Yeah. So, I just want, again, I want people to not sort of knee jerk to those crazy fat activists just make stuff up so they can stay fat. Really what it is many of those fat activists understand that even if we choose to pursue intentional weight loss, it is a rough road, including a lot of disappointment and possibly making your health worse along the way. And we just decide to opt out of that. Mm-hmm. It doesn't mean we want to take away the dream from everybody else. Right. It doesn't mean we want to take away the dream from everybody else. What I want your listeners to know is if you heard me say all of this and what you still want is to lose some weight with your GLP-1, bless you on your journey. And I will still be fighting for your civil rights. Yeah. And if it all crashes out, if 10 years from now we're having the Fen conversation about the GLP-1s, the fat activist movement will still be here trying to change some of these other systems to make it more possible to live well in fat bodies, regardless of whether these drugs work or not. Yeah. We'll be here. We're on 57 years. Yeah. And we're not, and I've been being told since I was in my 30s that I was going to die at 30, and I'm 51 now. Mm-hmm. And, the trolls love to tell me that I'm going to die before I ever make it to 50. Yeah. I could get hit by a bus tomorrow and they would be like, that fat lady back for being fat. So it is what it is, right? But like, I'm going to be doing this work for probably the rest of my life. And there will be people like me doing this work. And NAFA might not be your place, but maybe there are some other folks that you can connect with that have, that have some of these thoughts or some of these philosophies or are doing some of this action. And it's like just be cautious when you hear that sort of like the fat activists are just haters who are mad because you lost weight and they didn't. Is that what, I mean, there are some haters. There are some haters, but it's not a hater movement. It's a love movement, right? Like we're trying to build community and safety and liberation for people. And, at NAFA, we do that in a really systems oriented way. So it's tiny increments, but hopefully some of the other things we do creates a lot of space for people to be who they are and who they want to be, regardless of their body size. And if NAFA is not for you, but you like some of this, you can still contact me through NAFA's website, and I'll help you find the fat group that is for you. Your local fat group, your more radical fat group, the ones who are burning it down more than we are, whoever that is, I'll help you connect.
I was just about to ask you. I think there's definitely, like we're saying, there's a place for all of us to get together. But if us in this audience, where can we? Yeah, can we come to your party? And it sounds like it's going to be. Yeah, we all coming to the party. We're all invited.
You can come to our party. I will tell you that when you come to our party, one of the things we do is we create a space where people don't have to be exposed to some of this language. So yes, if you come to our party, you gotta talk the way we talk, or you gotta talk in that middle ground area. Bigger bodies is fine. And we don't do weight loss talk, and we don't we have spaces where we protect people from that, because again, it's so relentless every place else.
Yeah, I get that.
Spaces. But that doesn't mean we don't want you there. Right. We want you to be there with the intention of holding that space that way. And we don't want some of the folks in the sort of obesity advocacy world, we don't want you there because you are part of the problem, right? Now, I'm not talking about you guys and your podcast. I'm not talking about your audience. I may or may not be talking about some of your sponsors, but we haven't built enough faith with some of the bigger obesity advocacy organizations that they're too connected to the folks who we think are putting us at risk. So even though we have, I cannot partner with the Obesity Action Coalition. I can believe that there are some people in that organization that have the same intention for improving fat people's lives that I do, but those methods are so far removed from how we do our work. I can't partner with that. But I still want my work to benefit every fat person in the Obesity Advocacy Coalition and everybody else too, right? And so here are some things you can do, right? You can come be in our spaces if you can, if you can hold those boundaries, please come be in our spaces. All of our resources are available to you, whether you can be in the space or not, right? We have our YouTube channel. We have a podcast launching in the fall, the Fat Spotlight, where we would just be talking to fat ass, badass people about how they live in their fat bodies. So that's coming in the fall. August is Fat Liberation Month. We spend the whole month just educating and entertaining people and embracing the right and the space to be fat and to use that language. So we have all kinds of virtual events. They are all free. Some of them are for fat people only. Most of them are for people in all body sizes. And like I said, if we're not your jam, I'll help you find your jam. You can find NAFA online we're NAFA official on most of the things. For social media, we're most active on Instagram, but we're on, most of the other things. And our website is nafa.org, NAAFA.org. And you can use our contact form to send me a message directly. You can sign our petition for the Campaign for Size Freedom. And then if we start working in where you live on a law, you will get alerts from us. The local activists in Delaware are working on something. The local activists in Seattle are going to start working on something. Yeah. And if you want to be part of that work to pass the law, that's part of how we can help make sure that that you are tied in. And sometimes we have other campaigns. We had a petition going to Southwest Airlines to try to get them to not reverse some of their policies around plus size travel, and they're not as as accommodating as they were a year ago.
They were
still going to try to, there's info. If you are a Southwest flyer and you don't understand how those changes happened and how they might affect you, we have a Southwest page on our website that has all that information broken down. And so you can know what the policy really is now and how people are experiencing it. And we'll keep advocating with Southwest and other airlines and other forms of transit and, like wherever we can. We're a small organization. So if you heard things that you believe in and you want to help fund this work, like there's, we definitely would love to hire more staff. We are always looking for great volunteers. We'll be looking for new board members in the fall to start in January on our board. So, if you heard something that you like, or you heard something that you want to learn more about, just connect with us and see what else you can learn.
Yeah. That made me think of, you're talking about where is there discrimination everywhere. I'm thinking grant writing. Oh my gosh. I know NAFA probably goes through. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I mean, NAFA spent 50 years being laughed out of the room for most grants. We are the recipient of a grant from the Unitarian Universalist organization. They gave us one of their social justice grants to support the Campaign for Size Freedom. They are out there doing spiritual work that is also very connected with making sure people in all bodies are welcome, in their congregations. And we got some money from Dove to start the Campaign for Size Freedom. We've worked with Pinterest. We did a little bit of work years ago with Google. So we've had a little bit of corporate funding and some philanthropic funding, but most of our money to do our work comes from individual donors, and usually from people who are making $5 and $10 donations. Mm-hmm. So if you heard something you liked, you can also give on our website. We'll have a virtual auction during Fat Liberation Month, where we'll be, auctioning off a bunch of cool items by fat and fat positive creators. So that benefits NAFA, and it benefits those businesses, and you get to buy cool stuff. So there's a lot of different ways that we do this work and a lot of different things we do and a lot of different places where people could tap in if they're interested.
Yeah. I love that. That's awesome. I think and one of the biggest reasons I think that that's so important is that it's exactly what you said, especially for people class 3, class whatever, right? And we're looking at their numbers. I mean, I would say if you look at the studies, I've probably done twice what the studies were, right? But I still have obesity in my terms, right? And I still live in a big body in my terms, right? And I'm okay with that. But there are a lot of people that aren't. There are a lot of people that internalize that when they only lose 20% or when they only lose 10% or when they only lose 5%, that is then their fault. And that piece, that mental piece that I was talking about in the beginning that I think is so important, that is very, very real. And I tell people, and I've been criticized significantly in my community recently for making content about this, because I think it's important, because the numbers already show that the majority of people are going to, if you have had obesity, the disease, right, the way we speak about it, for a very, very long time, that you are going to need additional medical intervention, more time, whatever it is, if you want to continue to shrink yourself, be in a smaller body, whatever it is, right? Yeah. I'm trying to shift that with my content to focus more on just be the healthiest you can be. And if that healthy you is the body size this, but your numbers look good, your blood sugar looks good, you feel good in your body, you're, all these different things, then that's how I'm trying to talk about it. But the amount of people that come at me because they say that I am being negative and that I'm not being rooting them on, or I'm not this. And I say, I am not your coach. I am your advocate. That is not, these are different things, you know? I'm not your coach. I'm not your swim coach. I'm not your weight loss coach. I'm here to advocate for you to be able to have access to quality care, quality treatments, whatever those equal, right? And that's why I always spoke the obesity care, because it's all of these things, right? Mental, dietitians, all those things, and the different types of dietitian and nutritionists, all of that is so important, and things I didn't know until you and I had this discussion, So I think those things are, I get it a lot, in my community, people, but your content's negative.
I mean, some of them are going to love it. Oh, no, now she's
me too. It's going to be interesting. Oh, look at now.
Politics. Yeah. I mean, and again, we believe in body autonomy. We want those people to be able to pursue those things if that's what they think is right for them. Yeah. That doesn't, it works a lot like how, people will talk about for the First Amendment and then be like, I'm allowed to say anything I want to. Yes, but not without consequence. The First
Absolutely.
Amendment protects you from the government punishing you.
The government, exactly.
From your neighbor criticizing you, right?
A lot of people don't know that. I didn't know that. I didn't know that until the past couple years. Seriously.
It kind of works the same way as like people will do this. Like especially we see this a lot from people who were plus size influencers and now they're on, a journey. I don't, the word journey as a
journey, I know.
As related to weight loss stuff is always a little to me like, I don't know, man. I want to be on other journeys, but we will see sometimes what happens is like somebody who was very plus positive and now they're on a weight loss journey and they're talking about it differently. And then they do this sort of like, everybody turned on me because I lost weight. And again, like, did they turn on you because you lost weight, or did they turn on you because you turned and they didn't want to turn with you, or they didn't like the turn you took? Is it about the weight loss, or is it about the way that you've shifted your worldview? And you can't have it both ways. You can't have a new worldview and be in alignment with all the people who had your old worldview. That works, you just like you can't expect people to stand down on their most deeply held beliefs just because you've let go of them. And for some people, fat liberation is one of their most deeply held beliefs. It is not about making excuses to not lose weight. It is not about, giving up. It is about actually having come to the realization, sometimes by learning new information, more information. I think about Angela Meadows, who started what is now the 12th year of International Weight Stigma Conference, where researchers from all over the world come together to talk about where weight stigma shows up in our culture and our systems and in research. But Angela started as an obesity researcher. And then it was looking at the actual research and being like, this doesn't say what they've been leading us to believe it says, that transformed her. And now she runs this gathering of people from all over the world who've had that kind of experience of like, oh, when I actually stop and look at this, or when I follow the money to see whether maybe I'm a little suspicious of what, who funded this research, or how it was broken down, or how it was presented, or what research got killed because it didn't come up with these answers or whatever. Like, there are people who sometimes like we've come to where we've come as fat liberationists, not because we're in denial, but because we're actually exposed to more information than other people. And we've exposed ourselves to more information and different information. And so it is a really deeply held belief for a lot of people. Like, a lot of us believe this is life or death. Getting people to treat fat people fairly is life or death work. So if you seemed like you were doing it and now you seem like you're doing something else, we're going to be upset about that.
Yeah.
That's not because your body changed. That's because of some other shit you're doing. So because there are people, it's rare, but there are people whose bodies change by intention or not by intention, and they live forever or for a long time in those smaller bodies, and they don't turn in what they think about fat liberation. They were fat liberationists when they were fat. Yeah. Whatever circumstance led to them being smaller, they are still fighting alongside fat people. Yeah. And that is, we need to see more examples of that because they are out there.
I'm not trying to change you. Like, you know what I mean? Like, yeah. Yeah.
Well, and not trying to but there's less reward for that. There's less reward for, I lost weight and I still like the other fat people and I still want to be around the other fat people and I still think the other fat people are beautiful, because that doesn't get you the same number of clicks. It doesn't get you the same number of contacts. It doesn't it doesn't have the same socio-cultural and economic benefit as I've lost weight and now I'm going to be a spokesperson for weight loss. Doesn't have the same impact. Yeah. And so, but they are out there and there are examples of that. And that's the other thing I would say to your audience. You don't have to be an asshole to other fat people if you get thinner.
Yeah, true.
If you are taking these drugs, if you're taking these drugs and they are making your body do what you want your body to do, and you feel great about that, you don't have to be an asshole to fat people. And in fact, you could be an even more active ally to fat people, because now you are speaking from the position of privilege as somebody who's not seen as having an ulterior motive for making these claims.
It could
you're
change things
having credibility.
Yeah, it could change things if there were more of more of that happening.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I feel like
this is a good conversation. great conversation.
I think so. I mean, I think so. I think it's, I don't want to only talk to the people who already believe what we believe.
Yeah.
I won't get other people helping us do this work and other people changing their lives. Everything that diet culture promises people, except thinness. That you can have more friends, that you can have more love in your life, that you can be more connected, that you can be physically healthier, all that you can find clothes that you like better. Like, yes, it's all still hard for fat people, but all of those things become less hard when you have a community of people supporting you. And that's what fat liberation does for people at its best, right? Yeah. At its best, it gives you all the things that you were fantasizing about, or it can at least give you access to, more of the things that you were fantasizing about. Except you still have them you just have them in a fat body instead of having them in your fantasy thin body. Yeah. And so, if it works for you, great. If it doesn't work for you, come try us. we got
how about do both?
Even if it does work for you.
Both. If it does work and if it doesn't, we still work on it.
Yeah.
Try that.
I mean, that's the thing though, is just like most people though, like who have been struggling with this for a long time, it's not going to end like they tell you. I'm not trying to make anybody feel negative. It's not going to end, quote, end with whatever that even means. Well, Kim,
right? You're at the end and you're cured.
Of course, you have that attitude, right? That's what they say. I can be. So what if only 5% of people can lose weight and keep it off? I can be one of the 5. Okay, yes. But if you're one of the 95, we'll be here.
Yeah. What I tell people when they say it to me, I go, I am so happy for you. This TikTok is not for you. You know what I mean? Like, I'm so happy for you. But this moment, I'm talking to these people right here, right? Because all they're hearing is this nonsense. and it's okay. Like, I have no problem with people being positive and thinking you can do it. But I don't think it's fair when I have learned accidentally by doing this with Kat, right? That most of this is out of your control. Whether you were on one of these or not on one of these, yes, you can be a healthier version of yourself. Yes, there's many benefits to your health being on a GLP-1 or being treated for obesity or managing your food noise or your mental health capacity, all the different things that come with this, less weight and less inflammation, all of those things are important, right? And honestly, why I think a lot of people stay on the medicine. But there is a false thing that people think they will be skinny at the end of this, that this is that med, and that is just not true for most people.
And let's dig into it. Let's dig a little deeper. Well, we're kind of coming too late to it, but why do you want to be skinny? Like let's dig into that. Like what's
because of all the actual benefits that are being.
But what I'm saying is like. Right. Yeah. But the actual person, I'm talking like if I was playing like psychologist or something, let me ask you, I want you to think about it. Why do you want to be so like this small? And why is this the only
is this the only path to those other things you want?
Agree.
Those other things you want, or are there ways you can start getting some of those other things that you want right now? We tell people all the time, you got to lose weight to find a person. And then if you actually look around the world, all kinds of fat people have a person. You gotta, maybe you do have to lose weight to be in your dream job because your dream job is in an industry where the bias is that firm. Do you want to sacrifice everything else to that, or do you have a different dream job? Like what are the things that you
or do you have a different dream job?
Or do you have a different dream, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I made a video recently because we've had some people that when people will regain weight in the community, they've been a little nasty lately and judging them and stuff. And it bothers me because I'm like, if you
weren't doing it, then that's you wouldn't.
Yeah, like you're like you didn't build good habits and all this other nonsense.
That's everything that you just said is what we did. It was what we did 10 years ago to people who had weight loss surgery and regained weight.
Absolutely.
There were people who had. I mean, that is how some people who've had weight loss surgery ended up in fat activist spaces.
Yeah,
because they didn't know about them before they had the surgery. Then they had the surgery, and they regained weight or didn't lose as much weight as they thought or whatever. And the sort of support community. Did not. I don't want you around as an example of how I might not get my fantasy. So I need to tell you what you did wrong. That is the reason you didn't get yours. And I need you to not be here. And we heard that story over and over again of people being like sort of ostracized out of weight loss support groups, of weight loss surgery support groups, because they weren't maintaining the fantasy.
Yeah.
You know, and then they had no place to go for support. Yeah, and that's how some of them ended up with us, right? Yeah. Is like, okay, you know, now you're over here. I think I really love Jay Salazar. He's a TikToker and Instagrammer who is a teacher by day and has he's made all this content around how he was changed because he had weight loss surgery and he discovered fat liberation after he'd already had it. And, you know, and like what it meant to him to switch from doing like this diet culture content to being a creator who does this content that is about like, loving the body that I have and whatever it's going to be. And fighting for other people to be able to have that and to know what I now know about some of the side effects or some of the dangers or whatever. And I love his content. And we don't get to see this kind of content from men a lot either, like being really raw about body image and size discrimination and stuff. And I love Jay, but it is like, but like the way people turned on him when he went from, I make weight loss content to like, hey, what about if I actually talked about it being okay to be fat?
Yeah.
It's, you know, I mean, it's kind of, he talks about it and.
Yeah, I talk about, that's been a big thing for me the past like 2 years, right? Mm-hmm. It's just like, wait a minute, like, first of all, BMI is bullshit, right? And then like, but I mean, people do come at me and I have sort of accidentally sort of built this own little area of people that are like me, right? And then like Kat, who we lose weight and we feel better, but we're not skinny. And okay, what's now? And okay, what's next? And okay, is that okay?
You live life's thickness. I buy all the thick shirts, the THIQUE. We're going to reframe the word. But yeah. Anyway, I don't know. Own it. Just own your shit.
I mean, and you know, but I'm just what I want to say about that is like that pattern of, people getting angry at anybody who lost weight and starts gaining it back because there's evidence that could happen to me.
Yes.
I need to understand, I need to figure out what they did wrong so I can not do what they did wrong so that I can stay thin or I can get thin or whatever.
And then I got to post it.
And then I got to post it. And then I got to post it. And then I got to call everybody a hater if they disagree with me. That's the playbook. But like, even since before social media, like, again, we've been seeing this, you know, from like weight loss surgery stuff from, you know, well, I took fen and I didn't die. So why should it be taken off the market for me just because some other people had weaker hearts that it attacked them or whatever? Like all of the same patterns of, something's going to work for everybody. Oops, no, it didn't. Now we're mad at the people it didn't work for. Yeah. Eventually it works for even fewer people. Now it's even more dangerous. Now it's like these same patterns repeat over and over. And what's really interesting with the patterns around the GLP-1s is how much some of the patterns match the patterns of what happened with how we talked about pain and then how we learned to talk about pain so we could prescribe more opioids, and then how we had a crisis on our hands and what that all looked like and what the pharmaceutical companies knew it was looking like and did anyway because it was making them so much money. And like, there's a lot of parallels there with,
I can see it,
with the pharmaceutical companies and the way that they have tried to shape how we talk about and think about obesity in order to create more of a market. They admit that. They say in their own documents, we're going to create a market for obesity treatment. This is not like, but if I say that, I sound like a crazy conspiracy theorist, but I'm not.
No, but that's true though. But I mean, I'm in this space. That's all true.
And it doesn't mean that the drug itself is inherently bad. Opioids are not inherently bad. Opioids have had incredible pain relief benefits for people, and for other people, they destroyed lives and entire communities. And we just like, I'm not trying to be the boogeyman of anyone's fantasy of thinness.
Sure.
I understand why people have that fantasy. I've been doing this for I don't know, 18 years now. And there are still moments when I have the diet culture gremlins pop up in my head about what my body should look like or what it should be able to do or whatever, especially with, it runs deep and, and bodies change. I started doing this in one kind of fat body. I have a different kind of fat body now that I'm menopausal and have some disability I didn't have before. So I can't move in the same way. And like everything changes and you have to do it again, right? You have to recalibrate around it. But when you have a sort of political framework, not just the sort of like, ooh, am I cute in this dress out of size 16? But you have that sort of political framework. The political framework teaches you how to ask the critical questions, and it teaches you where to look for support when you're struggling. And that helped me around all of my body changes related to age. After I had COVID, I started losing all my hair, and some of the things that got me through, like, oh, I'm going to be bald and I'm not sure I'm ready for that. And what's that going to mean for me aesthetically? And are people still going to think I'm attractive? And like all of that stuff, because I had worked those questions through body stuff, through size stuff, I had a playbook to work those questions, and it helped me make other adjustments. And so now I'm older, everything's saggy or gray or wrinkly or whatever. It's the same thing, right? I know my worth. I know the way that I don't feel like this just out of nowhere. I'm not feeling these things in a vacuum. There are cultural messages that make me feel these things and, keep me feeling these things and try to sell me stuff to not feel these things. I have to do the same, like, am I going to buy this eye wrinkle cream? It's the same conversation that it would have been about the Slim Fast 20 years ago of like, is this what I actually want to do? Is this what I actually care about? Or is this some kind of other pressure? But like all of that skill building came to me through fat liberation work, even before I was calling it that. And so that's why I'm grateful for the generations of people, especially, but not exclusively women who did this work before me, that I benefit from. And I want people to take from that what they can.
Yeah.
We're all out here trying to survive in a capitalist hellscape.
Right.
Power and privilege and other things shape our access. They shape our information. They shape the way we treat each other, and we have to interrupt that wherever we can.
Yeah.
So thank you for, like, I know y'all identify as interrupters.
Yes.
I know that not everybody in the community I work with would be like, a GLP-1 podcast is a interrupter. Come on. But I think like creating dialogue like this, being willing to challenge and maybe even piss off some of your audience, and being willing to challenge and piss off some of my audience because I'm here, right? Like
I'm challenged. If you're pissed off, you're challenged, right?
And then do something with it. And then do something with it besides just yell at one of us on the internet, right?
Sure.
What do you want to do instead? Right. What do you want to do instead? So thank you for giving me the time and like letting me tell your folks about the movement, the work. And is there anything else you want to get? I know this is like an extra long episode. I do this to podcasts all the time.
No, it's okay. I mean, I'm telling you, like, I think our episodes are usually one and a half like hours or so. We ran over, but I think it's great. No, this has been wonderful. I think, I ask everyone, and I maybe you should have said a little more in the beginning, if there's anything that I've realized now that I'm on the internet and make content, is that the way things work with algorithms, and we're all on them, like whether it's social media or whether you watch a certain channel, everybody's tailoring something that is going to tickle parts of your brain, right? And the more you engage with it, the more it's going to deliver to you. And so it's very easy to get to where you're just affirming your own bias all the time. And then that can become your doctrine. And then it can become your almost like a religion. It's something you'd be willing to, fight for, and something to fight against, and something you really to hurt others for. And I started seeing that happen a lot, just the way that the technology works, right? And I just thought, I want to make sure that we have spaces where we can have conversations that have us consider other perspectives, that we don't necessarily have to agree or even agree to disagree, but just better understand, And I think that there's many things out there that don't get, the attention or the airtime or the space, right? Because everything's so short form and stuff like that, that we don't get to have a discussion here. There were so many things that you said like nuances and details and things that never get anywhere. It's always the beginning and the
Because
end.
we're trying to do it all in the 3 minutes. Because if you do it in longer than 3 minutes, then Instagram pops up with this warning of like, well, we might not show this to people. Then
Post it anyway. But yes, exactly. Yes.
You'll get 2 views though, but yeah.
So, we have long form content to be able to do things like this. And I just think this is a bigger conversation than a 3-minute TikTok. And that's why this podcast exists. And I hope if you're a listener and watcher of this podcast that you understand my intent is only to bring you, different perspectives, because I want you to make the most informed decision possible about what you do with your health, mental, physical, otherwise, especially as it pertains to the size of your body. And so, and the mental health of it, you guys know how important that is. So that's what this was for. And I hope that you learned something and considered a different perspective today. And if you want to learn more about Nada, and if you want to learn more about Tigress, then we'll put all the links in the show notes so that you can click and go and help and find and all the things that you want to do. And we love you guys so much. And
we'd love you to follow, share, and give us 5 stars.
Yes.
Oh, yeah. Kat, ask them to do all the things.
We would love for you to follow, share, give us 5 stars.
Yes. Like, share, subscribe. Yes, all the things. And it's been a lovely conversation. And we will see you next week. Hasta la pasta.
Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Friends, the GLP-1 math is just not mathing. When I look and see 104 million people in America are struggling with the disease of obesity, and about 11,500 obesity specialists, that breaks down to like 1 obesity specialist per 9,000 patients. I saw the stat that said 72% of GLP-1 users say that they want more support on their journey. Because I think we all realize you start on these medicines and you think, oh, it's just going to be like phentermine or anything else I've ever taken in the past. This ain't like that, bro. Like, it's just not. It's different. And I provide a lot of that here by interviewing doctors and things like that. But I've had people been asking me, emailing me for years, asking me to do one-on-one consults, which I do, but they're expensive, right? So I decided to make a group where 10 people at a time would come in with myself and with Kat. We could talk about recipes. We could talk about exercise. We can talk about side effect management. We could talk about, ideas on breaking stalls or things that we've tried. None of it's medical advice, but it is community support. It costs $50. If you're interested in that, there's a link in my bio. You just fill out that form. If you're not and you just want to go this route, that's okay too. I love you. You're not alone. It's not your fault. And hopefully you'll sign up to hang out with us. All right. Now back to the show. Are you interested in understanding GLP-1 medications like Ozempic, Wegovy, or Mounjaro? Then join us on the Plus SideZ Cracking the Obesity Code, the groundbreaking podcast helping people change their lives one episode at a time. The Plus SideZ podcast is a disruptor. We're breaking down barriers, smashing stereotypes, and sharing inspiring stories that'll leave you feeling informed and empowered. Join us every week to learn from doctors who are specialists around GLP-1 medications like Ozempic, Wegovy, and Mounjaro. They'll provide you with science and facts to validate these incredible stories. But that's not all. We'll also bring you the voices of the GLP-1 Mounjaro TikTok community, real people who face the challenges of obesity-related diseases and disorders and discovered the incredible plus sides of GLP-1 medications. Our episodes are filled with heartwarming stories, laughter, and moments of triumph. You'll connect with our amazing community members who are reclaiming their health and experiencing their fullest lives. Are you ready to embark on a journey of discovery and empowerment? Tune in to the Plus SideZ Cracking the Obesity Code, and together we'll change the narrative around obesity and end the stigma. Subscribe now on YouTube or your favorite podcast platform and join our incredible community. Let's celebrate the plus sides of life together, because every story deserves to be heard. Every life deserves to shine, and everyone deserves access to expert knowledge and medication. The Plus SideZ podcast. You're not alone. It's not your fault. Let me tell you a quick story. I was telling Kat how I was regaining weight after my 100-pound loss using GLP-1 medications, and I was having snacky cravings and waking up at 3 a.m. and I had hot flashes, and I was worried. But Kat was like, listen, I went through this last year. It's perimenopause, and I started HRT, and she used this company called Winona. So I started going there to see if this was something that was going with me. Turns out it was, because I'm 46. And it's been amazing. It's taken a while to find the right dose, but once I did, it's just been huge. I've been sleeping. I feel more myself again. And the hot flashes are gone, which is really bad. So I will tell you, it's just been so big for me. And so I wanted to partner with them on the podcast because obviously many of our listeners are going through this same age range and definitely are having these issues. And there's just no need for you to suffer. So if you go to the link that's in our link tree, you can click on that and save money. If you go there and you meet all the criteria, and this might be something for you to try. So I just want to make sure you have this great resource because it's just been such a big difference for me and Kat. Again, you can go to the link in our link tree and get what you need. Today's episode is brought to you by Ro, a telehealth platform that's changing the game of GLP-1 access. What sets Ro apart? Ro understands the challenges of navigating insurance hurdles and the skyrocketing prices of GLP-1 medications. That's why they specialize in getting insurance approvals for GLP-1s. And if insurance is a barrier, they go a step further by prescribing brand name zepbound vials for prices close to those of compound GLP-1s. With Ro, you're not just getting a prescription, you're getting a partner in your journey that's helping you access affordable treatment and guiding you every step of the way. Whether it's insurance approvals or cost-effective alternatives, Ro is here to make sure that you get the medication you need. Visit ro.co/plus SideZ with a Z today to see how they can help you take control of your weight management journey with affordable, accessible care. That's ro.co/plus SideZ with a Z, making healthcare work for you. Check out the link in our show notes for more details. Are you interested in understanding GLP-1 medications like Ozempic, Wegovy, or Mounjaro? Then join us on the Plus SideZ Cracking the Obesity Code, the groundbreaking podcast helping people change their lives one episode at a time. The Plus SideZ podcast is a disruptor. We're breaking down barriers, smashing stereotypes, and sharing inspiring stories that'll leave you feeling informed and empowered. Join us every week to learn from doctors who are specialists around GLP-1 medications like Ozempic, Wegovy, and Mounjaro. They'll provide you with science and facts to validate these incredible stories. But that's not all. We'll also bring you the voices of the GLP-1 Mounjaro TikTok community, real people who face the challenges of obesity-related diseases and disorders and discovered the incredible plus sides of GLP-1 medications. Our episodes are filled with heartwarming stories, laughter, and moments of triumph. You'll connect with our amazing community members who are reclaiming their health and experiencing their fullest lives. Are you ready to embark on a journey of discovery and empowerment? Tune in to the Plus SideZ Cracking the Obesity Code, and together we'll change the narrative around obesity and end the stigma. Subscribe now on YouTube or your favorite podcast platform and join our incredible community. Let's celebrate the plus sides of life together because every story deserves to be heard. Every life deserves to shine, and everyone deserves access to expert knowledge and medication. The Plus SideZ podcast. You're not alone. It's not your fault.